Have you ever ignored a warning, only to realize later it was the only thing standing between your family and death? What if the person plotting against you wasn't a stranger, but the one you trusted enough to build a life with? Tonight's story isn't just about betrayal. It's about an 8-year-old boy whose courage exposed a nightmare no father could have imagined. And by the end, you'll understand why sometimes the smallest voice tells the biggest truth. If you've ever wanted to see karma catch up with someone who believed they were untouchable, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay until the very end. Because today's revenge story is one you'll never forget. My name is Nathan Carter. I'm 42 years old, and until that evening, I believed my life was ordinary. Not perfect. Just comfortable. I had a steady job selling commercial equipment, a quiet suburban home, and a son named Liam, who had just turned 8. He wasn't the loudest kid. He wasn't the fastest either. But Liam noticed things. The kind of tiny details adults ignored because we were too busy convincing ourselves everything was fine. My wife Vanessa had just left for what she called a 4-day business conference. At the airport, she hugged Liam first, smiled like any loving mother would, then gave me a quick kiss before checking the time on her phone. "I'll call when I land," she said without really looking at me. I smiled. "Don't work too hard." She waved and disappeared through the sliding glass doors, pulling her silver suitcase behind her. Everything looked normal, or at least I thought it did. As Liam and I walked back toward the parking garage, he stayed unusually quiet. Normally he'd complain about missing his mom before we'd even reached the car. Not this time. He stared at the terminal entrance until Vanessa vanished from sight. Only after I started the engine did he lean forward from the back seat. His tiny hand trembled as it grabbed my shoulder. "Dad." His voice barely rose above a whisper. We can't go home tonight." I chuckled softly, assuming he'd become emotional after saying goodbye. "Why not, buddy?" He swallowed hard. His face had turned pale. "I heard Mom talking on the phone last night." I looked at him in the rearview mirror. "What did she say?" Liam hesitated. Then he whispered 7 words that instantly drained every ounce of warmth from my body. She said, "They'll both be home by 8. I laughed. God, I wish I hadn't. The smile on my face faded the second I looked into Liam's eyes. Kids make things up. Kids misunderstand conversations. That's what I kept telling myself. But Liam wasn't crying. He wasn't being dramatic. He looked terrified. "What exactly did you hear?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm. He squeezed the straps of his backpack until his knuckles turned white. "Mom thought I was asleep. She was talking on the phone in her bedroom." He swallowed. "I heard her say, 'They'll both be home by 8. Then she laughed." "What kind of laugh?" He stared out the window. Not a happy laugh, a scary one. A chill crawled up my spine. Still, my mind searched desperately for a reasonable explanation. Maybe she was talking about coworkers. Maybe she was planning a surprise. Maybe Liam had misunderstood everything. "Buddy," I said gently, "grown-ups say strange things sometimes. I'm sure it isn't what you think." But Liam shook his head. "No, Dad," his voice cracked. "Please don't take us home." For a moment, I almost ignored him. I almost turned onto our street like every other evening. Instead, something deep inside me refused. Call it instinct. Call it a father's intuition. Whatever it was, it wouldn't let me dismiss the fear in my son's eyes. I drove past our neighborhood without saying another word. A mile later, I pulled into an abandoned storage lot hidden behind a line of old oak trees. From there, through the branches, we could see our house in the distance. The porch light glowed softly against the evening sky. Everything looked peaceful. Too peaceful. I shut off the engine. "We'll wait 10 minutes, I told Liam. "If nothing happens, we'll go home." He nodded without taking his eyes off the house. The silence inside the car felt suffocating. Every tick of the dashboard clock sounded louder than the last. 5 minutes passed. Nothing. I started feeling ridiculous. I even smiled. Looks like we're spending the night hiding from imaginary monsters. Liam didn't answer. His breathing became faster. "Dad, what is it?" He pointed toward the side of the house. At first, I saw nothing. Then movement. 2 dark figures slipped along the fence line. They weren't walking toward the front door. They weren't neighbors. They stayed low, constantly looking over their shoulders. One of them carried a bright red plastic container. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. Gasoline. The man twisted the cap. Even from that distance, I caught the sharp chemical smell drifting through the evening air. Liam grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. His voice was barely audible. "Dad, I told you." Before I could answer, one of the men smashed the back window, and a second later, orange flames exploded inside my home. The explosion of flames shattered every illusion I still clung to. 1 second, our home stood peacefully beneath the fading sunset. The next, fire burst through the broken window like a living monster, swallowing the curtains in an instant. No. The word escaped my mouth before I even realized I was speaking. Liam buried his face against my shoulder. "Dad, that's my room." His tiny voice cracked, and in that moment, something inside me broke. If we had driven home like we always did, if I had laughed a little longer, if I hadn't listened to my son, we would have been inside that house, sleeping, waiting to die. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped my phone as I dialed 911. "Emergency services. What's your location?" "My house," I gasped. "Someone's setting my house on fire. There are 2 men with gasoline." The dispatcher ordered us to stay where we were, but every instinct screamed at me to run toward the flames. I couldn't, not with Liam beside me. The 2 men disappeared into the darkness before the first sirens echoed through the neighborhood. Within minutes, police cars and fire engines flooded the street. Red and blue lights painted the night, while firefighters battled the growing inferno. I held Liam tightly as black smoke rose into the sky. That house wasn't just wood and bricks. It was where I'd carried my son through the front door as a newborn, where we'd celebrated birthdays, built Christmas mornings, shared thousands of ordinary dinners. Now, everything we owned collapsed beneath roaring flames. Nearly 40 minutes later, the fire was finally under control. A woman wearing a detective's badge walked toward us. "I'm Detective Rachel Brooks." Her expression was calm, but her eyes missed nothing. "I need you to tell me exactly what happened." I told her everything. The airport, Liam's warning, the whispered words, the abandoned lot, the men carrying gasoline. She listened without interrupting once. When I finished, she remained silent for several seconds. Then she asked a question I never expected. "Mr. Carter, when was the last time your homeowner's insurance policy was updated?" I frowned. "I don't know." Vanessa handled all our paperwork, the bills, the insurance, the finances. Detective Brooks slowly closed her notebook. "I recommend you find out as soon as possible." The seriousness in her voice made my stomach tighten. "Should I call my wife?" I asked. She shook her head immediately. "No, we'll contact her first." Her answer hit me harder than the fire itself. For the first time, a thought entered my mind that I refused to believe. What if this wasn't random? What if the people who burned my house weren't trying to destroy my home? What if they were trying to destroy us? Standing beside the smoking ruins of everything I'd built, I looked at Liam. He hadn't saved our house. He had saved our lives. And neither of us had any idea that the real nightmare was only beginning. That night, Liam and I checked into a small roadside motel. Neither of us slept. The room was quiet, but silence had become its own kind of torture. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flames climbing the walls of our house. I saw my son's bedroom burning. I imagined what would have happened if we had arrived home 10 minutes earlier. At nearly 3 in the morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I opened my laptop and logged into our shared insurance account. Vanessa had always handled the paperwork. I trusted her completely. Within minutes, I found something that made my blood run cold. 6 weeks earlier, our homeowner's insurance policy had been dramatically increased. The coverage on the house had nearly doubled. Even more disturbing, new life insurance riders had been added for both Liam and me. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. Why would she do this? My hands trembled as I scrolled through the documents again and again, hoping I had misunderstood. I hadn't. Someone had planned for our deaths long before the fire ever started. Just as dawn began creeping through the motel curtains, my phone rang. Detective Rachel Brooks. I answered immediately. "Mr. Carter." Her voice was unusually serious. "We've confirmed something important." I stood. "What is it?" "Your wife never boarded the flight." The room spun. "What?" "Airport security cameras show Vanessa entering the terminal." Rachel paused. "But she never appeared at the boarding gate. No record of her getting on the aircraft. No arrival in Seattle. She disappeared before takeoff. I couldn't speak. The entire business trip, the suitcase, the goodbye kiss, every single moment had been part of an elaborate performance. I slowly lowered myself onto the edge of the motel bed. Liam looked up from beneath his blanket. Dad, is Mom okay? His innocent question hit harder than any punch ever could. I wanted to tell him everything would be fine. I wanted to believe it myself. Instead, I forced a weak smile. The police are trying to find her. He nodded quietly. A few hours later, my older sister Emily arrived carrying a duffel bag full of clothes for Liam and enough groceries to feed an army. One look at my face told her everything. She wrapped me in a hug before I could say a word. Then she looked directly into my eyes. Tell me the truth. I told her everything. The airport. The warning. The fire. The insurance policy. The missing flight. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she took a long breath. Then, with a calmness that surprised me, she said, "This wasn't an accident. This was planned. And whoever planned it made one fatal mistake." I looked at her. What mistake? Emily glanced toward Liam, who had finally fallen asleep. They underestimated the only witness they never saw coming. Our little hero. Emily was right. The biggest mistake the people behind this nightmare had made was believing an 8-year-old boy wouldn't remember what he heard. Over the next few days, Detective Rachel Brooks built the case piece by piece. Every phone record, every bank transaction, every security camera, every insurance document. Nothing was too small. Then, she called me into the police station. The moment I walked into her office, I knew something had changed. A thick case file sat on her desk. Rachel slid 4 photographs toward me. The first showed one of the men I'd seen outside my house, heavyset, shaved head, holding the same red gasoline container from a gas station security camera. "We identified him," Rachel said. "Name's Marcus Hale. He's been connected to several suspicious insurance fires over the years." She pushed the second photograph toward me. Another man. Younger, thin, nervous looking. The driver. Neither face meant anything to me. Then Rachel placed the third photograph on the table. The air left my lungs. No. It was Claire Morgan, Vanessa's closest friend. She'd attended our wedding. She'd celebrated birthdays with us. She'd held Liam as a newborn while smiling for family pictures. "What is Claire doing in this investigation?" I whispered. Rachel folded her hands. "Because surveillance cameras caught her meeting privately with your insurance broker just 40 minutes after your wife supposedly boarded her flight." The fourth photograph confirmed it. There sat the insurance broker across from Claire, laughing over coffee. Rachel leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, we've also uncovered months of secret phone calls between your wife and this insurance broker." My chest tightened. "Are you saying?" Rachel nodded slowly. "We believe they were having an affair." The words landed like a hammer. Suddenly every late meeting, every weekend conference, every locked phone, every excuse finally made sense. But Rachel wasn't finished. She opened another folder. Inside were printed text messages recovered through a search warrant. One message made my blood freeze. "Claire, Marcus wants half the money before the job. Vanessa, pay him. Once Nathan and Liam are gone, we finally get our new life." I couldn't breathe. Gone, not divorced. Not separated. Gone. She hadn't wanted to leave us. She wanted us erased. Rachel quietly let me absorb the words before speaking again. "We have enough evidence to arrest everyone involved in the fraud. But," she looked me directly in the eyes, "we still need proof that Vanessa knowingly ordered your murders." I swallowed. "How do we get that?" Rachel's expression hardened. "We make her believe you've suspected nothing. You'll call her. You'll tell her you still love her. And if we're lucky, she'll confess." The thought alone made me sick. Pretending to love the woman who had signed my son's death warrant felt impossible. But then, I remembered Liam's terrified whisper in the airport parking garage. I remembered him clinging to my arm while our home burned. I remembered his tiny voice saying, "Dad, please believe me." I looked at Detective Brooks. My hands slowly curled into fists. Then I nodded. "Tell me exactly what I need to do." The trap was finally ready. Now, all we needed was for Vanessa to walk straight into it. For the next 3 weeks, I became an actor in the cruelest performance of my life. Every evening I called Vanessa. Every evening, I pretended nothing had changed. I told her the insurance company was still processing the claim. I told her Liam was struggling to sleep. I told her we were staying with my sister until the house could be rebuilt. And every single night, I forced myself to say 3 words that felt like poison. I love you. Each time they left my mouth, it felt as if another piece of my heart died. But Detective Rachel Brooks had warned me. Don't accuse her, she said. Let her believe she's safe. Guilty people don't confess when they're cornered. They confess when they think they've already won. Finally, the day came. I sat inside a quiet interview room at the police station. A recording device blinked on the table. Rachel sat across from me, listening through a headset. My sister Emily squeezed my shoulder before stepping outside. I took one long breath and dialed Vanessa. She answered on the second ring. Hey, sweetheart. Her voice sounded warm, gentle, exactly like the woman I'd fallen in love with years ago. The sound of it almost made me forget what she'd done. Almost, I've been thinking, I said quietly. About the fire. She sighed. I know, Nathan. It's been horrible. I let several seconds pass. Then I asked the question Rachel and I had rehearsed over and over. Vanessa, did you know it was going to happen? Silence, long, heavy. I could hear her breathing. Finally, she spoke. Nathan, it wasn't supposed to happen like that. Every detective in the room looked up. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. What do you mean? I whispered. It was supposed to be quick. Her voice cracked. You and Liam weren't supposed to suffer. I made sure of that. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. Those words echoed inside my head. You weren't supposed to suffer. She wasn't denying it. She was explaining it. I felt years of love, years of trust, years of memories, collapse into nothing. My voice trembled. You planned this? I didn't have a choice, she cried. You don't understand. Marcus wanted more money. Claire kept saying there was no turning back. Everything got out of control. There it was. The truth. Not because she wanted forgiveness. Because she believed I still loved her enough to understand. Across the table, Detective Brooks slowly smiled. She lifted her thumb. We had it. The confession. The conspiracy. Everything. I closed my eyes one final time. When I opened them, the man who had loved Vanessa Carter no longer existed. Only a father remained. A father determined to make sure the woman who tried to murder her own child would never hurt anyone again. I spoke my final words to her. Goodbye, Vanessa. Then, I ended the call. Less than 4 hours later, Detective Brooks called with the words I'd waited weeks to hear. Nathan, we've arrested every single one of them. The arrests happened before sunrise. Vanessa, Claire, Marcus, every person who had helped plan the nightmare. One by one, they were taken into custody before any of them realized the game was over. For the first time in weeks, I slept. Not because the pain was gone, but because Liam was finally safe. Months later, the trial began. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. Everyone wanted to know why a mother would plan the deaths of her own husband and son for money. The prosecution laid out every piece of evidence. The increased insurance policy, the affair with the insurance broker, the burner phones, the bank records, the surveillance footage, the text messages. Then, they played the recording. The courtroom fell completely silent. Vanessa's own voice echoed through the speakers. It was supposed to be quick. You and Liam weren't supposed to suffer. No one moved. No one even breathed. The jury didn't need anyone to explain what those words meant. She had confessed. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the witness stand and looked toward the jury. I never looked at Vanessa, not once. My son was only 8 years old, I began. He heard something that scared him. He trusted me enough to tell me, and because I finally chose to listen, we're both alive today. I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat. The hero in this courtroom isn't me. It's my little boy. He had the courage to speak. I simply chose to believe him. Several jurors wiped tears from their eyes. Even the courtroom felt heavier. After only a few hours of deliberation, the verdict came back. Guilty on every major charge. Attempted murder, conspiracy, arson, insurance fraud. The judge sentenced Vanessa to decades behind bars. Her partners received lengthy prison sentences as well. Justice had finally arrived. But revenge wasn't watching her handcuffed. It wasn't hearing the prison doors close. Real revenge happened later. Months later. Liam laughed again. He slept through the night. He stopped checking every room for smoke before bedtime. One evening, while we were unpacking boxes in our new house, he looked up at me and smiled. "Dad, I'm not scared anymore." That single sentence meant more than every guilty verdict in the world. Because they had tried to steal our future. Instead, they gave us a second chance to live it. And that's the funny thing about karma. People think it arrives with anger. Sometimes, it arrives as peace. As for me, I didn't get my old life back. I built a better one. One founded on truth instead of lies. One where my son knew his voice mattered. One where evil lost, because one little boy refused to stay silent. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another unforgettable revenge story. And tell me in the comments, if your child warned you about someone you loved, would you have believed them? Until next time, remember this: the truth may whisper, but karma always speaks loud enough for everyone to hear.